have more power, more strength, more influence. The lack of access is number 2 to reproductive health care. Why? Because especially in the rural areas, the fertility rate is high. And because of that, women, maybe the average children that they have in the provinces, maybe 6. So that's quite a bit. And especially for women to take care of their children, household chores, because they're expected to do all those things. And it really happens to the poorest women. Number 3, lack of gender disaggregated studies and data. We don't have any accurate statistics of what's happening to gender mainstreaming, and the data is something that we really have to consolidate. And number 4 is, despite higher literacy rates, because in the Philippines, women excel in school. But then because of that, but despite of that, there is still pay equity issues. Men are paid more than women, even if you look at the kind of work that they are doing is actually the same. So the lack of technology access or access to digital technologies. So next slide, please. So these are the hurdles. But for Filipino policy makers and their partners in the private sector addressing the challenges have required comprehensive strategies. And one is gender mainstreaming in policy development, including gender-responsive monitoring and evaluation mechanisms. Number 2 is conduct gender-sensitive studies that influence the policy, because we have to really find out what's going on with the men, what's going on with the women, not only in the metro area, but especially in the rural areas. Number 3 is to continue to shatter the glass ceiling, increase incentives for women to participate in decision-making, not only in institutional hierarchies, but also to focus on the corporate CSR and among SMEs. And I'm going to talk more about this, about what we are doing and what we are executing with the government sectors and Women Business Council. And last is encourage public-private partnerships, knowledge sharing, and capacity building that will lead to a growth mindset, because growth mindset is one thing that's very important, especially when you talk to the SMEs. They need to have that kind of change of mindset. And then the last slide, please. So, in essence, there's another slide. In essence, if the slide is not there, it's okay. I'd like to say that the Women Business Council Philippines works closely with different government agencies. DILG, Department of Trade, DOSC, Philippine Commission of Women, to help cascade their policies and generate products with the greatest possible impact. What are these things? We come up with trade fairs, exhibitors, so that they will have access to markets. Then we come up with assistance for the finance, tools, like come up with matching with the financial service providers to help them with the loans or anything that will help them grow their business. Digital transformation webinars for SMEs, so they will learn how it is to be technically better throughout the nation and through webinars. Financial stewardship sessions, not only for the women SMEs, but their families, because this is very important. In ending, I'd like to say that we need to continue to empower by building more businesses, more trade and investments, to continue to include by being engaging in communities and other economies, and to grow by being scalable and by sharing knowledge. So let's go forth, Apec 2024 and beyond. Thank you. Thank you. I got it just right.
Thank you, Rosemary.
Thank you.
Now we turn to Daris Gubins, Head of Sustainability of Credit Corp Peru. Daris, women's financial inclusion constitutes an important vehicle to promote their empowerment and economic autonomy. Financial inclusion allows women to better manage financial risks, to actively participate in economic activities, and to generate higher income. It also empowers them to have a more decisive role in their family's financial decisions, prioritizing the education and the health of their children. Information, communication, and technology have the potential to save time and money when conducting financial transactions, and it could be an instrument to foster women's financial inclusion and reduce the gender gap. The question is, how can Apec economics use ICT to promote women's financial inclusion so they can fully participate in the economy?
Thank you. Thank you very much, and thank you for having me here in this panel today. Very excited to be here. I also have a presentation that I'll be sharing with you. And I think this topic is crucial to be addressed in Apec economies. No? How to include more women in the economy and how to financially include them in particular. I think I want to start with why. So why is it important to include women? Well, as we have seen in the previous presentations, they are a driving force for economic growth and social development as well. No? And in APEC, we have 1.5 billion women. So this is a very large group. It's an important group, no, that we must address, and we have to figure out how to include more women. Before I move into these numbers, I just wanted to mention, when we talk about women, I think we have to bear in mind, and especially when designing strategies for inclusion, women is not one group. No? Women are very different depending on where they live, their age, their access to education, to the internet. So we need to think about differentiating strategies when we are addressing how to include them in the economy and how to include them financially. As we see here, we have like 58% of the economically active population in APEC economies that are women. No? Again, large numbers. But this is compared to 73% of men. So there is a gap there, no? A labor participation gap. And if we turn to Peru, we have 44% of the economically active population that are women. But again, there is a gender gap there, no? 87.7 ratio of female to male labor force participation. So this is something, again, to think about, no? We need to encourage the participation of women in the economy. Although we have these gaps, women are a driving force. No? We have, in Peru, we have 40% of SMEs led by women and contributing more than 18% of the nation's GDP. No? Again, these are large numbers that we're talking about. No? This is not something to be dismissed. No? They are a driving force of the economy. And if we look at studies that have been performed, this was a study conducted by the IMF, in countries with, in the lowest tier of gender inequality, they had the potential of increasing GDP by 35% by closing these gaps. No? So this is a driver of economic growth and social growth, for sure. And 4/5 of this growth is only due to including women in the labor force. This is not even considering the gender diversity effect. So what is key to include women in the economy? A key driver is financial inclusion. And financial inclusion is not just having a bank account. No? It means having access to products and services that can enable a person's growth, their well-being through use of financial products. For instance, a loan, it can help an SME grow. access to insurance, no, to prevent unpredictable events that may harness their economic advancement. It has to do with savings, access to savings accounts, no, again, to face economic hardships, and several other different options. No? So financial inclusion, key, again, not just a bank account. And something to be highlighted here is that when we include financially women, they have a multiplier effect on their environments. They tend to spend a big proportion of their savings and their income in their children's development, their education, healthcare, nutrition. So this is preparing future generations for, again, economic advancement and social development. So when we talk about financial inclusion, digitalization has been a key driver. No? And this is in a large part due to the pandemic. No? People in the pandemic saw the need to use digital financial services apps, for instance, to make payments when mobility was restricted. And this was the case in Peru, for instance, with government relief funds. No? The way to distribute them, a main way to distribute them was through digital wallets. So digitalization has helped foster financial inclusion. And here we can see in this graph, from 2020 to 2022, the number of digital payments per capita has multiplied itself by 2.6. So this is something very, very important. So digital strategies are key to acknowledge when designing inclusion strategies. And we can see digitalization is increasing for both men and women. This is a great advancement. But again, we do have gaps. No? Women are less digital than men. No? We have men that are more digital intensive, more occasional users, and we have a higher proportion of women that are non-digital. Some barriers that we might face here is an education gap. Women report that they have women are more likely to report by 1.6 times that they lack digital skills than men. So this is something to think about. We need to close gaps also in terms of access to networks, to devices, etc. And we need to bear in mind about stereotypes and cultural norms. No? Sometimes male counterparts may restrict access to internet or devices because they fear a disruption to the traditional social order. But when we think about digital alone may not be enough, no? Especially in Latin American countries. We have 240 million people that lack internet access. No? So it's, if we only focus on digital, we would be missing out on this segment as well. So I would invite you to consider phygital strategies, no? Where we leverage digital devices, capabilities, strategies on in-person as well, no? A mix of the two, depending on who we're trying to reach. There are issues as well of distrust and uncertainty. No? A lot of people distrust the financial system, and sometimes we can improve this trust with in-person interactions. No? There is unfamiliarity with digital channels, no? Especially in rural populations, for instance. So while they are still unfamiliar with digital channels, then we need to leverage this with in-person strategies. And as I said, there is also low levels of digital education that we need to address before we go full on with digital. Well, now I would like to share with you just two examples of what we're doing at Credit Corp. Credit Corp is the leading financial services group in Peru. We have a universal banking line of business, microfinance, insurance and pensions, and wealth management and asset management. And here I will focus on two of our initiatives that really make us proud and that I hope will bring ideas to all the audience. And this is very anchored in our purpose as a company. No? Our purpose is to contribute to improving lives by accelerating the changes that our economies need. Yape, I was talking about digital wallets. Yape is our digital wallet. This has been a key accelerator of financial inclusion in Peru. In only 4 years, we have included 1.7 million people through this app, and over 50% of that is women. So that's, again, we're helping close the gaps. We have prioritized also different strategies for rural areas as well, targeted both at men and women, no? But we're always trying to gather data segmented women and men, which helps us identify any potential gaps we may have with our product offering, our education offering, etc. And financial inclusion is not sustainable if it doesn't come hand in hand with financial education. No? People must know how to use financial products to their benefit. So here, financial education is key. And it is also a key driver for trust. No? We were talking about trust, distrust in the financial system. This is a key lever for trust. So YAPE, again, working in both digital and in-person formats, no, to provide financial education for both women and men. And now we have designed these microloans that are a single installment, very simple, very easy to use. And this is a stepping stone because it's a way to advance in the financial inclusion journey with very simple products that, again, help generate trust and help our users start becoming more familiar with the financial system. And here, well, we have provided 150,000 women with loans, and for a third of these women, it was their first formal credit. No? Again, a great way to financially include women. And now I turn to Mi Banco. Mi Banco is our microfinance institution. It has always had a vision of closing gender gaps, no? Since the beginning. It has 51% of its portfolio that are women. And Mi Banco changed their traditional in-person advisory model to a hybrid model. Again, leveraging on both digital and in-person. No, with multi-channel customer advisory services, customer experience, etc., and centralizing risk assessment digitally, which has helped us deliver a value proposition in a more cost-effective way, which helps, again, scale our solutions to reach more people and financially include more people. And here I'd like to briefly talk about Mundo Mujer. Mundo Mujer is a value proposition, an integral value proposition that we have recently designed. We had, prior to this, a credit focused on women that I'll go into in a little bit. But now we're not just offering microloans, we're thinking about a whole proposition that includes insurance, for example, cancer insurance for women, that includes savings accounts, that includes free courses for them, training, etc., to advance women in their development, not only economically, but also in terms of skills. We work very closely with women who lead social organizations, such as soup kitchens, Vaso de Leche, etc. These women are a driving force in their communities, and we work very closely with them to help, again, generate trust, provide financial education, and eventually bring financial solutions. And last but not least, Crédito Mujer. This is a loan that was specifically designed for women. It does not require the spouse's signature, so it is aimed at providing women with financial independence, and the way to give them more autonomy over their own finances. We have reached over 160,000 women with this product, and over 60,000 of them, again, first formal credit. So these are the examples that I wanted to share with you, and very briefly, just share with you some things that we have learned so far in this journey where we're trying to close these gender gaps. First, as I said, segment customer data by women and men. It really does help you uncover gaps and try to close them, to drive your actions. Second, as I said again, women, not one single segment, different needs. So then we need to understand these segments in terms of different factors. I mentioned a few earlier. Complement in-person and digital strategies to reach those who are really non-digital yet. We need to smoothen that transition. And education, I cannot stress the value of education in financial inclusion and in introducing women in the economy in general. We still face a lot of challenges in financially including women. I think we need to create these multi-actor strategies, as my co-panelist was mentioning before. This is key, and we need to break some of the stereotypes that still pervading in society, and for that we need a combined approach. We need to improve connectivity. People who have access to the internet are many times more likely to be included in the financial system. An increase in trust in the system is key, and we need to do this through financial education and through simple user experiences and transparency. And I just wanted to finish off with this quote: "Gender equality is more than a goal in itself. It is a precondition for meeting the challenge of reducing poverty, promoting sustainable development, and building good governance." This is good not only for women, this is good for society as a whole. And in Critical, we're going to keep working towards this goal and close as many gaps as we can. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Darius. Various studies report a correlation between access to digital finance services and higher GDP growth, as well as lower income inequality. To achieve digital financial inclusion, it is crucial to provide citizens, particularly women, with adequate training on the skills that are needed to effectively and safely use financial services. By doing so, they can bridge the financial gaps that exist and take advantage of these resources. We turn to Ms. Aroa Santiago, who is a gender specialist in inclusive economics at the UNDP, and she will share her experience and views on how can Apec economics promote digital literacy and financial awareness amongst women and girls. Aroa.
Thank you. Thank you, Socorro. I also have some slides over there. Thank you so much. I would like to start with a reflection, and is that women's financial exclusion is part of a broader systemic challenge. We've been listening actually how gender social norms, how there are other elements that discriminate in the economy. So at UNDP, we see women's financial exclusion as a symptom of a broader illness. So what we see here is that we see that there are advances that are timid on women's financial inclusion. We see that there is advances, particularly because of the digitalization that is making it possible. But we also are seeing the risk of a new generation of inequalities if we don't advance at a pace that allow us to reach our main counterparts. So we may end up always having this gender gap between financial inclusion and digitalization. We see that there is a close interlinkage between monetary poverty and time poverty, as Minister was mentioning at the beginning, the importance of looking at care. It doesn't matter how much we educate women or how much we support women to be entrepreneurs if they don't have the time to do it. So we really need to look at the economy as a whole. Also, we see that when we wonder why are these gender inequalities so stubborn? Why are they not changing? The conclusion that we end up with is that it is because all the advances that we are managing to have is to help women learn to live in an unfair system, but we are not changing the structures. We are not really touching the core of the economy as we should. And actually, there is a huge opportunity. So when we look at financial inclusion, what we're really looking at UNDP is at the broader picture of all the financial flows, all the money in the world. Who has it? Where is it going? Who has control over it? Who decides where it goes? So we look at public money, that currently there are $33.5 trillion in global public budgets. We look at the overall overarching wealth, 500 trillion in global wealth. There is enough money in the world. We never had that much money in the world. The problem is that we don't need more money. The problem is where this money is going. So having said that, and And going to the question on how we can better educate women, what I would like to propose and what we'll see from UNDP is that we really need a broader education. So, and education and awareness starts on challenging biases, challenging gender social norms. And this starts when we look at the micro level of these challenges for women's financial inclusion. We go at the individual perception, so we work with women, so they can question their own ambitions and goals, and whether they were actual goals that they have or whether they will self-learn. Maybe there are ambitions that they felt their family had for them in life. Then building awareness on the usefulness of finance and options that they have available. And then, well, there is this saying that only you can educate a person when the person is ready to receive this education. So only when there is this interest for women to really then learn how to access finance, then there is a moment to do this education. But this education also needs to reach at the family level. We need to look at the intra-household decision-making, who controls the money at the home, who decides who can access or not to funding. And we also need to look at the community perceptions. What is the discrimination? Are the banks discriminating against women? Is the bank saying, where is your husband? Why didn't come with you? So we consider that it is fundamental to work at all these levels. But we also need to look at what is happening globally. What is the macro level? What are the macro level challenges for women and financial inclusion? So we can consider that there are three main elements that we need to work with. One is the gender social norms that I just mentioned, and the other two are financial flows, public and private, and the formal laws and norms. Her Excellency the Minister was mentioning some discriminatory legislation that really exists here in this country, but globally, the World Bank calculates that there are 176 countries that still has laws that discriminate against women on business creation. So while we are trying to work on supporting women to access their own finance and their financial assets, we need to look at the environment as well, and we need to challenge that. Looking at the private finance flows, they reflect the discrimination in society. Decisions are taken by people, and people is biased. So we cannot expect private financial flows to be purely from the homo economicus that is completely neutral and is not influenced by these inequalities. The same happens in public finance. We see that the fiscal policy, economic policy is also biased because we are human beings, the ones who are developing these laws and these policies. And we are also taking decisions on fiscal policy that are based on our beliefs and what we think that should be our goal. Usually those are economic goals of economic growth. We know that since decades ago that was growth at all costs. This is changing, and we see it in these platforms like in Apec, but we still see that there is disconnect between the development goals of a country, all these wonderful ambitions on gender equality, on reducing climate change, on reducing inequality, and the goals that we see on fiscal policy or economic development. This has an influence on who receives the money and what the money is for. So this really is having an impact at the local level on whether women are going to have access to public money or not, or whether the government is going to help redirect private money to them. Also, I made a note here at the bottom that discussions on finance, development, and on gender equality usually happen in different rooms and different ministries that rarely talk to each other. I know this is not always the case, and I know there are specific examples here in Peru. I know that Apec is having conversations between ministries of women, ministries of commerce. So there is a fantastic efforts here and there, but still the rule of thumb is that we are having still conversations in separate rooms. There you go. So for women's financial inclusion, the proposal and how we work is that we still need to work with local communities, women's organizations, women, men, local businesses, banks, and focus our financial education to all of them. but I wouldn't say financial education. I would say education on gender equality and helping women access to finance. But at the same time, we need to work to help to conduct reforms of fiscal policy, development policy, economic and social protection policies that really contribute to gender equality. Often, when we work with governments, we realize that we really don't understand what impact our own policies are having. And when we diagnose together with governments the policies, then we realize that we are actually having some negative effects that are opposing some other policies and efforts that we were trying to achieve. So it is important that we understand, and also that we help conduct reforms of private financial flows and investments. So it's not only the financial inclusion of women that goes from the loan that this woman got from the bank, but it's also investors that are investing in them. It's the whole private financial flow that is really also targeting towards women. Well, at UNDP, we work combining this local support with more broader macroeconomic and development policy support. How we do it is through our own existing programs. So I'm sitting at the gender team, but I work with my colleagues in finance, in local economic development, in financial, local financial inclusion, on environment, to help puts there at the center advancing gender equality. And we are supporting right now 95 ministries of finance. We're working with them to help them align their public and private finance with the sustainable development goals, including on gender equality. This is an example on how we are helping leverage and align private capital for gender equality. We are working with financial centers for sustainability that represent 82% of the global equity market. They created at their own initiative a women's group to advance gender equality within them, to understand how their own policies can help redirect these funds towards gender equality. They developed a charter on gender equality, and we are helping them operationalize it and implement it. And we're also developing investors' maps for the SDGs and gender equality, where we identify opportunity investment areas that can help women and can advance gender equality, and then we bring them to private investors that may be interested. And just to finalize, this is a short example on how we help leverage and align public finance for gender equality. And we do it through our initiative, Economics. We work with governments on making fiscal policies work for gender equality, helping them expand care systems, and making sure that that policy is based on evidence. And here, we consider that it is fundamental to look together at revenue and expenditure, and again, looking at all the financial flow as well as the institutional reforms. So governments are ready to not only implement but maintain these reforms. We're working right now in 17 economies, and we have 11 more economies in pipeline. And closing, and I'm aware of, I am 40 seconds over my time. I think it's not that bad. So we had in February our first UNDP Global Dialogue on Public Finance and Tax for Gender Equality. It was a fantastic high-level representation, all decision makers, ministers, vice ministers, and directors and commissioners. And out of 40 countries participating, 28 already have built action plans and are willing to start working to advance fiscal policy tax reforms, what shows that there is really an appetite, a momentum, and interest to make it happen. And I had here the key findings, but I'm very happy to discuss in the corridor in the coffee break if you want to know more about the key findings. Just as a summary, I can say that it is very important that governments, together with civil society, with private sector, with international organizations, work together to redefine better what are our objectives as a society, as an economy, as a country. And to make sure that we align our objectives in the economy and finance with our objectives in gender equality. And going back to the topic of financial inclusion, I think, and we are convinced at UNDP that if we don't change the system that is unjust, we can teach a lot of women to survive, but we will never we will never reach gender equality on financial inclusion, on digitalization, or on gender equality in the economies as a whole. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aroa. Now, it's the turn of Ms. Sara Minkara, the Special Advisor to the Office of the International Disability Rights of the United States.
It's okay, Ed. But 4 slides.
Women still face various obstacles when it comes to accessing financial products and services, as we all know. These hurdles are clearly much higher for women with disabilities. According to the GSMA, women with disabilities experience the highest rates of digital exclusion. They have limited access to cell phones and mobile internet, which makes it difficult for them to access information about the financial system and digital services. To address this situation, a range of actions are necessary, notably from various entities in the public sector. However, it is also essential that the private sector implement actions to ensure the effective financial inclusion of women with disabilities. So what role can the private sector play in removing these barriers to financial inclusion for women with disabilities? Sara.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna speak from here so I can be closer to you all because I'm blind, so I need to feel, okay? So can everyone just snap for me so I know how many people are in the room? Okay, yeah, snap, okay, awesome. We're gonna actually answer this question together. So we're gonna do the work together. But before I get started, I do just wanna thank my amazing team, Hannah Nasri, Stacey, and Katie. Without these people, without my team, I don't really get the work done. So I just wanna say a huge thanks to my team. Round of applause for them. Okay, so I'm gonna introduce myself in a different way. Some of you have heard this, but this is gonna really feed into the conversation, the answering the question, okay? I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, I'm a colleague, I'm a neighbor, I'm a traveler, I'm a troublemaker, I'm an introvert. I love fashion. I love audiobooks, especially mystery thriller audiobooks. The voice has to be good. I love to go out to coffee shops, drink coffee. My favorite color is green. I used to be able to see when I was younger. If you ever want to make me happy, feed me chicken. I love to do math problems. Yes, that's my favorite hobby on the side. I love nature. I love hiking. I love riding horses. I am Muslim. I'm a woman. I'm a person with a disability, and I'm very proud of it. So why did I introduce myself this way? Just shout out, and I'll repeat it so people can hear. Why did I introduce myself this way? Sorry, can you speak louder? It's how I want you guys to know me. Definitely. What else?
To connect.
Diverse size of who I am. Definitely. What else?
To connect.
To connect. Definitely. What else? Disability doesn't just define me. Definitely. Even though it's part of my identity. What else? What is it? There's a lot of similarities that we can connect with. Definitely. What else? We're just, so of this and then this, we're just what? Yes, we're amongst a lot of different women, definitely. And then there was a voice over there. No? Stacey? Disability is not a barrier for me. Awesome. Thank you, Stacey, and thank you. One more. What is it? No limits. So all of these are right, and there's a couple more. We are all individuals comprised of so many different identities, some that can be seen, right? And some that are not seen. And we're all people that have one common thing that we share. The desire to be seen, to be heard, and to be valued, right? Don't we all share that? But my question for you is, do we actually see and hear and value women with disabilities? Persons with disabilities? No. And that's what we're going to talk about. So let me ask you the next question. What are the narratives and what are the assumptions with regards to persons with disabilities in our society? Just shout out. What are the narratives that exist in our society on disability? They cannot do. Definitely. What else? They need to be what? Protected. Exactly. Oh, the many times I hear. Yes, definitely. Protected. What else? What? I know all of you have thoughts. Burden. Exactly. What else? Dependent. What is that Spanish? Sorry? Someone has to be with me all the time. What is it? You can't do anything alone. The narratives of our society are very much what you said and more. You're burdened, you're incapable, you're less than, you're suffering, you're struggling. You need to be fixed. I feel bad for you. Oh my God, you're so brave and courageous, inspirational. Society doesn't see as users and contributors to the system. What do I mean? Society doesn't think of us, oh my God, we actually have families to take care of. Oh my God, we actually need to access public transportation to get to jobs. Oh my God, actually we can do jobs. Oh my God, I go online and I buy things. I access things online. I have a business. People don't see us, persons with disability, and especially women with disabilities, as contributors. The care economy conversation, caregivers and care receivers, where do they put us? On the care receiving side. Even though a lot of women with disabilities are also caregivers. Let's talk about then, those narratives lead to what? Lead to barriers in our society, right? Narratives then create barriers. Do you know that only 3% of websites, only 3% of the internet is accessible for persons with disability? 3%. What does that mean? That means we are going to be dependent because we can't access them. Whereas if people think about web designers and coding and programmers, and if they design it to be accessible on the other side, right, on the development side, it can allow us to become more independent. Let me give you another stats. Only 0.5% of microfinance loans in developing countries go to persons with disabilities. 0.5%. Why? Because they don't trust that we actually can be entrepreneurs? Why? And I want you to really think about the question why. Let me give you another stats. Persons with disabilities say, 77% of persons with disabilities say they're limited with employment because of lack of public transportation access. That results to, only 1/3 of persons with disabilities are employed. That results with further economic barriers. People with disabilities, when they're employed and they have the same qualifications as others, their salaries tend to be $21,000 less, even though they're the same qualification. That's from the World Economic Forum. Why? There's legal barriers in some countries for blind people to have access to their own banks. Do you know that financial institutions, only 26% of them have financial services for people with cognitive disabilities? And do you know that women and girls under the age of 18 will experience sexual violence up to 68%? 68% under the age of 18. And this is especially for girls with mental disabilities. Do you know that organizational leaders across companies, only 56% of them don't think about disability at all. I can go on forever. But these barriers exist from infrastructure, physical, digital infrastructure, access to capital, access to education, employment, financial services. You know, only 27% of free trade agreements have any mention of disability as well. There's so many barriers, but where do these barriers come from? The narratives in our society. So let me ask you a question. Narratives create these barriers which lead to the exclusion of us. Does anyone know what's the cost on society by excluding the 1.3 billion individuals in this world with a disability? And it's estimated, I think, around 480 million persons with disabilities in APEC economies. Any ideas of the cost on society? What is it? A couple of trillion? Yes, we'll get to that. There's $2 trillion in disposable income in the disability community. What else? Does anyone know how it impacts our GDP? Up to 7%. I think it's much more than that, but let's take the 7%. It impacts our GDP. We're not tapping into the $2 trillion. Also, $13 trillion persons with disabilities and their family members that have disposable income. But do you know what's more than that? We lose out on the innovation that the disability community brings forward. Does anyone know what innovation we use on a daily basis that comes from the disability community need? Any thoughts? What is it? Sorry, I didn't. Contact, okay, contact lenses. Okay, we can, yes, that could, yeah. What is it? Voice transcription, great. What else? Other innovations. Do you guys know text messaging came from the need of the deaf community? What? Braille, are you talking? Braille, but yes, that's true, Braille, but what I'm saying, every daily activity that we all use, there's a lot of things that come from the deaf community, from the disability community need, like text messaging, closed captioning, voice recognition. You know, in your iPhone Siri, right? And those kind of. There's so much innovations in our society that comes from the need of persons with disability, and what? It benefits everyone. Why don't we tell those stories? And why do we see disability inclusion in our economy as a burden? Because you know what? We're still seen as a burden. So let me tell you a little bit who I am and what our office does. And then we're going to go talk about what can we all do together. So I'm the U.S. Special Advisor on International Disability Rights. My team and I lead the U.S. government foreign policy on disability. So our goal is to insert and integrate disability into all of our foreign policy priorities, not just from a human rights lens, but from an economic lens. And this is why we've engaged in many different multilateral spaces, including APEC, ASEAN, C5+1, G7. For instance, this year we'll have the first ever G7 disability ministerial meeting. That's pretty huge. We've been working a lot with our APEC secretariat team, and our APEC colleagues in the US and other economies on making sure disability is integrated into these different conversations, not just in the disability-specific dialogues, but across every single dialogue and ministerial meeting. We need to make sure all of us take this work forward. It shouldn't just be on the shoulder of persons with disabilities and women with disabilities. So my ask of you now is, what can we do to really change the narrative and disrupt the reality that exists right now for persons and women with disabilities? What can we do? Make sure policies are inclusive of disabilities. And I would also make sure that policies are inclusive of disabilities from a point of it's a benefit, it's a value for the economy at large, definitely. What else? Louder, louder. How do we change our personal assumptions and opinions? Yes. How do we do that? Education, inclusion, political will. What else? Visibility, more policies. But all of these are important, but how do we actually make it happen? Narrative change comes from actually society comes to a point where it says we demand the inclusion of persons with disabilities. So that to disrupt the reality, first, we need to make sure we have the difficult conversation. Because you know what? There will be policymakers that say it's too costly. There will be program and tech designers that will say, I'll think about inclusion later on, not now. There will be people in our society that still see disability from a point of charity. So in order for us to disrupt the reality, we need to have the difficult conversations. We need to engage sectors that we don't tend to engage with, like what? Media sector, entertainment. We need to make sure the private sector takes it forward from a point of value and not just as it's a nice thing to do as a CSR. We need to create more shared responsibility and build capacity so every single one of us can carry this work forward. Because let me tell you something. When disability is not seen, they're not counted. When they're not counted, we don't count. And in most spaces, people don't think of us. I want you in the next few days that you're here, how many times does disability come up? Even though we're a big portion of the population. And how can you take this work forward and bring more allies along the way? Because it's important work. Digital inclusion, and as AI becomes more of our reality, if disability and accessibility is not the table, it's going to further marginalize us. So my ask of you, 1, please take this work forward. 2, please make sure persons with disabilities are at the table and their voices are heard. 3, please make sure they're at the table across all policies, and so we can come to a point where we say nothing without us. This work is super important, and without the disability community, we will never reach full economic development. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sarah, for a very inspiring presentation. I think we have a little time for a few more questions for our panelists. I will turn to Ms. Rafael. In your presentation, you mentioned that a collaborative strategy was necessary for women's financial inclusion. Regarding this topic, could you share us the lessons that you learned in the Philippines about public and private collaboration, and how can Apec Economics make this public-private collaboration more impactful?